Welcome back to Let's Talk Race in Ireland. I'm your host, Harrison Paul. Today we grieve the death of a black billionaire, prominent black banker. He was amongst six people dead, with his wife and his son, Hubert Wigwe. We know that this man had plans to advance African wealth and continue on his legacy with owning banks. Of course, this is all speculation in regards to how he died. So I want to start by saying every opinion that will be voiced in this podcast will be mine. It's not based off of fact or any public knowledge that is fact. But I want it to be known while we are speculating his death. He was on the way to the Super Bowl when him and his wife and I think a few others and his son died. Six others in a plane crash. I want it to be known because in my last episode I put up on the screen for you guys to see, I was discussing about the mafia and us as Africans need to better understand the West as mafia. And this is a brilliant opportunity to think about the possibilities and the possibility if this was very suspicious, his death, if there was people behind it. I want Africans to understand when we speak about this is that we often underestimate the West and don't see them as a mafia group who have been profiting and causing havoc and causing death and wars for many years and generations. We just see it like, I don't know, business people across the world. I think when we look at things so ignorantly, we run the risk of underestimating what it really takes to come out of this place. Let's say this man was killed purposefully, willfully. Let's say he was targeted and he was killed because of his wealth, because of his position, because of what his capacity was to make change. I want us Africans to understand that this is not something that's far-fetched. The people who have killed African leaders in prior are now public knowledge. We understand this. It's no longer a conspiracy theory. Yet none of those people were tried for war crimes or crimes of any of the sorts. I want us to understand that the very people who we are supposed to look to for justice are the very people who benefit off of our demise and who set the rules. There are too many people that will be so peed off with the advancement of Africa because they benefit from it. I was asked recently from a friend of mine, he does a lot of work for Africa, and he asked me to write something, a little piece of script on the World Bank and what they could do better and what not. And we were both scratching our heads because it was going to be something that was going to be used for a campaign regarding, they have a new leader now, a new head of the bank. And I guess people were starting to do petitions so this head of the bank can manage the money differently and even it out. And I wrote something that was, very antagonistic as you would imagine. And he kind of was like, no, this letter can't be like that because it's more so something that encourages them of how they could do better. And I made a joke and I said, how do you not criticize people who've done so much evil? And what I want Africans to understand is that all these people, the UN, the World Bank, even the EU, these people are all interconnected. How they benefit from Africa is interconnected. And these people will stop at nothing to make sure that they retain wealth. I think as Africans, we underestimate how much trouble the Europeans and the Westerners will be They're already in trouble. The dollar is already valued lower than it's ever been in years. They're already in so much debt and trouble. Do you think now you're seeing the cost of living go so high in Europe? Do you know how higher it would be if Africa was the one place that they now could not benefit off of free of charge, basically? You want to know how much the cost of living will go up? Why I think it's important to understand what extents they will go through is because when we look at people like Rwanda and we look at the M23, and like I said, I put in my last video, it's naive to think that that African leader has a direct passage where he doesn't have to hop over death in order to free his people. I said this in my last podcast, but I'm going to say it again now. Look at this man here. Let's picture a world, because this is very true. Let's picture a world where someone gave him a phone call telling him or expecting him to give him some sort of power or to hold back, let's say, from any other plans that he had to do that would more benefit African people than it would Western powers. Think of how chilling it is that he possibly could have made a turn that pissed somebody off. And we've just seen a brother lose his life. Just like that. With his wife and his children. Can you imagine yourself being an African leader, knowing that you run the risk of losing your life and your families? We have to understand that these people can get away with stuff like this because the general public lacks understanding. When the public, African diaspora and Africans, understand and have made a decision to keep their eyes focused on the true enemy, he will not be able to commit crimes. I want to use Israel and Hamas as a brilliant example. Israel would have gotten away with this war had it not been for the public movement. And I pray and I hope that if Palestine keep their foot on the necks and keep the pressure and don't let it fade away and don't allow it to be a trend, they could see movement in their plight for freedom. So when we think about Hamas and we think about the fact that they become the scapegoat for Israel, we must understand that Rwanda and M23 become the scapegoat for the imperialists. And what I loved about Palestine is whenever they hit, Israel hit that we have a right to defend ourselves, they said no, but what about this? And what about 19 so-and-so? And what about the power cut? And what about this and that? And what about that and that? Where the African fails is we exert too much energy on Hamas, our version of Hamas, and we let Israel run free every single time. We direct too much energy on Hamas, and that's a psychological thing. Because it causes too much discomfort for us to focus ourselves and focus the pressure on the imperialist. One thing I love about Palestinians, they're ready to go to war with any Israeli. They're ready to go to war on social media, anywhere, psychologically, with anybody who is not fully backing Palestine in this time. That's why everyone who is quote unquote uninformed It's just saying, listen, I don't know nothing. I'm staying out of it. It's that fear. It's that fear, right? Oh, what do I know? Because they know if I step on either side, I've created an enemy. Black people, we have to look at the psychology and the consciousness of our people. No one becomes a black enemy by taking the side of Israel in moments like this. Because we don't have a backbone. So when we think of M23, which is apparently the Rwandan soldiers who are there perpetuating, or rather, sorry, forgive me for that, protecting and maintaining Western profits. Pressured. I don't like the term manipulated. Why? Because manipulated also gives the analogy or the incentive that someone is silly enough to be manipulated. I like to think of the idea, like here our brother Wigwe, Sir Wigwe, rest in peace. Your life is at stake. Your family's life is at stake. So when we think about the genocide in Congo, I beg us, can we please think about the root and fight against the root? Palestine, do not waste this hour to learn from the Palestinians and even people who are on the side of Palestine, meaning anybody who's like Arabic in any form. I'm noticing they're really, one with Palestine at this moment. I can just tell, if you touch them, you've created an enemy. If you even just allude to, well, we don't know, if you allude to, you're going to have someone after you. And I just wish Africans had this level of vim for our own causes. We don't. That's why the boys on Shadeboro could make jokes about it.
Yeah. Most people globally are fearing Lucifer. These people are fearing Steve Jobs.
Hey, so you're making jokes on war?
I'm not making war jokes.
Oh,
this is comedy, man. It splits the room.
All right, Tom, listen. Pull up Sunday. I'm going to give you a shout.
Do you think someone in Palestinian people could have made a reckless joke like that? That sits amongst them. Now, the boys on I said Shadeboro, the boys on the 90s podcast apologized. I understand. But how it happens in the first place is because we don't have a culture of intolerance. We are very tolerant to the suffering of Africa, to the evil crimes happening against Africa. These are crimes, guys. And they're not crimes being done by, quote unquote, Hamas, Rwanda, M23. There's a real corporate. It is the West. And I just want us as Africans in this time for Congo to understand freedom starts with our capacity to decide as a people that we are not here to play about this subject. You will not find a Palestinian, you probably won't even find an Arabic person of any of the sorts who is about to play with you about this topic. They will unfriend you based on who do you support. Artists are losing fans for not posting about. Ask yourself, Africans, are we this way? Because we've internalized our oppression and we have normalized our oppression. And that's why it's easy for you to say, we're just corrupt, that's why. Anyway, back to my life in Europe. I just got corrupt anyway, that's why. Anyway, back to my life here in the West. Guys, Let's not miss this crisis. Let's not waste this crisis. Let's not waste this time. Don't waste your time educating people on Rwanda M23 and the puppets who are being used between life and death. It's not games. There's a lot riding on this for the Europeans and the Westerners and the European Union and the UN and the World Bank. And I'm going to give you a fun fact before I go. 2 fun facts to tell you the psychology. Fun fact number 1, do you know when Africa were given their independence, all the companies that were in Africa at the time, all the Western companies that were in Africa, obviously were now leaving, right? They left any debt that they may have had whilst their businesses were in Africa. Check this out. They were still importing their money and sending it back to Europe. They left the debt with Africans to deal with. Can you imagine that? So the company we didn't benefit from, the companies, the businesses, the corporations we didn't benefit from, were still for us to pay to the UN, and they were not cut off. Some were even paying to this very day. And these were the rules set by the UN. These are mafia people. Who is going to call them to account? What helps us is when they know the general public don't understand this information. Israel is getting harder for them to commit crimes because now people are watching every move and waiting for their next slip up. And it's now Palestinians' job to watch it as how tough as it is and then make their next move to say, we're bringing this to court again. They're waiting for one bomb that's out of order, although there's been plenty that's been out of order. Just now waiting for excuses. But the pressure is what is needed. We need to keep the pressure. We need people who are competent, asking questions about these corporations that are making money off of Africa. And then the last thing I will say is this. There's a saying back in Africa, I've been wanting to say this for a minute now, that says, it's a Zimbabwean saying, and basically it says, why are you angry? Like let's say I did you wrong, right? I spilled your drink. I was here, I knocked it over. And then you say, oh, come on, Harrison. And I say, come on, relax. Did I kill a white person? It's in Shona now, I can't reiterate it. But that's a saying within our culture. Like, did I kill a white person? Like, did I really do something so big? I want you to understand that worship for the white man is deeply rooted in the culture of African people. This is why we are not free. How can people who have languages like that and phrases like that ever overthrow the oppressor? With a mentality like that, how can you ever? We first must fix the mentality. I don't care how much educated people they come in Africa. Can you believe that? There's a saying that says, relax, I didn't kill a white person. You know, like the Irish one, you'll live. Like, I didn't kill a white. This is normal language for Zimbabweans. Now, ask yourself, this is a deep question. What kind of mind frame are our people in to create that kind of a phrase and to make that a casual phrase within their culture? What kind of a phrase, what kind of a mental state do a people have to be in? That is a low place. And then ask yourself the next question. If we want to do an African revolution, where should we start? You got it right. Don't start up there with the leaders. Don't start up there with the back. Don't start up there. Start there. Start there. That's why I admire the Chinese. They do not allow you to create narratives about China. They're out there doing commercials about how poor people in America are. They don't even allow you to have their own Google. They have made a decision. This is our world. And if you want what's ours, you come into our world. And from the rooftop, they have understood the assignment. Indoctrinate our people out of the assumption that everything Western is the best. The people reflect the top, and the top reflects the bottom. If we are a people who have phrases like this, and that's just a phrase, if we are people who still wears the hair texture of the white man, this is why I mention these things. How on earth will these be the same people who rebelliously, boldly, and unwaveringly, even when it's tough? You know how hard this job gets for me? But I've made a decision. And it's a decision I know majority of our people, I don't know if they can make this decision. And strangely enough, this side of things feels very lonely. Because the majority of our people are not prepared to hop on the other side of the fence. On this side of the fence, if we all think like this, operate like this with those basic ground morals. One thing I say all the time, I'm going to finish here. One thing I learned about the Irish, they don't play about that British story. They do not play about the British story. And they do not play about it repeating itself. Unfortunately, Africans, when we are people who are still in this state of mind, we're not free from our enslavers mentally. We cannot expect a revolution, because I said it before, when the African leader does arrive, he'll be met with a bunch of people who are not ready to sing his tune. And he will be left disappointed, worn out, probably killed off. But what he will need is a bunch of people who are ready to die for the cause. Or something simple will happen like this, where he's put in a plane and killed off, and there should be a movement right now. There should be uproar amongst the African diaspora, African media, African worldwide, asking questions. Africa is too afraid to go to war, psychologically, physically, any sort of way, with the West. And until we are ready to go to war with the West, we will not see a new Africa, because there are so many hurdles that we will face. Thank you for watching.